All right, hopefully this is somewhat enlightening for you. This is, of course, the Minnesota One Call presentation on their pilot program that they're doing up there and I'm involved with. I'm not from Minnesota, but I'm actually out of Nebraska, Omaha, Nebraska. Barb suckered me into this. She is the One Call director up there, and she called me probably, well, it was right before COVID, I believe, saying we're going to get a pilot program put together to make everybody's maps better, try to get an initiative to get people to get out and GPS out their utility lines. She thought I had some interest in it, and of course we started this when COVID was just starting, so we had nothing else to do but sit on Zoom calls, right, and talk to each other. But I appreciate you coming here because I think what we're on to is pretty cool. It's something that I wish was happening a long time ago, and I believe it's something that we can start initializing in other states as well. So that's nice to see all the other One Calls here to kind of see what we're doing up there in Minnesota. If you have any questions as I move along here, just feel free to ask. But that's why we have the guy videotaping here to prove that I actually showed up and did my job. So, hey, Barb. So anyway, Barb got me involved, and then she also involved a bunch of others. Pretty much anybody and everybody she could find that had any interest in mapping underground utilities, she pulled into this project. And so myself and her were supposed to do this presentation, but there are several more people that are involved every day. Every month we have meetings, we have different groups within our larger group that meet for their sole purposes, and I'm part of the locating group since that's what I deal with. I'm group number one. The locators are the guys on the ground and bring in my perspective on it. But we started this off of the CGA Best Practice Initiative. They were trying to come up with things that would help improve damage prevention, and one, of course, is GIS mapping. Getting better maps. How do we do that? I mean, how do we together get better maps? They're very inefficient, right? I mean, you've seen a lot of the maps that the utility companies, the different stakeholders have given you, and some of it's all right, some of it's great, some of it's way outdated, and the locators themselves suffer because of that, the excavators suffer because of that, and so yeah, we are way behind on getting more information out to the field and more proper information. So, you know, when it comes to planning and designing, the engineers, when they're calling in and wanting to do an engineering ticket, and a locator has to go out there and locate 2-3 miles worth of stuff and paint it and flag it, but they're not doing any digging. Wouldn't it be much easier just to have everything GPS mapped and send them a shape file or some kind of file they can open up and see where everything is for their underground engineering? And of course, over notification. You know, if we can get that buffer zone smaller because we have good GPS coordinates on where the facilities lie, they get less tickets. Less people have to go out there and chase down tickets that they don't have to locate on. And then, you know, giving the excavator more information. And that's what we're going to get into, and that's the beauty about this whole project. It's actually giving the more information to the excavator before they start to dig. And so, you know, we have the GPS-based maps. Everybody's starting to update their maps, but we have databases that can talk to each other and share information, and that's what we're doing in a result for better education. And so Steve Swayze is actually the chair of this committee. He's a pretty intelligent guy. He's with the Geospatial Advisory Council up there in Minnesota, and him and Barb headed up. And then, like I said, we have our different groups within that larger group that work on individual projects together. And so why does it exist, the Minnesota Underground Utilities Mapping Project Team, or UUMPT for short? Could have came up with a better name, something a little shorter, but it explains exactly what we do. We're there to solve problems. You know, we want to come up with a solution to try to help us with damage prevention later down the road. And so we're leveraging the technology that's already out there right now. So what can we do to bring this technology together? I think that's the problem. Everybody's kind of doing their own thing. We got locators locating, we got GPS units GPSing, we got mapping services, but none of them really know what each other's doing. Somebody's got to kind of put the glue together and have a collaborative effort on updating the maps. If we can do it together, excavators included, the maps will get updated more accurately, and everybody's better off for it in the future. Makes our jobs a lot easier. Better maps, more accurate maps, ability to share the data, and safer excavation as a result, right? So these are the 4 groups. We have the planning group. Of course, that was the initial phase. We were just planning on what groups we need to have, what we're going to be trying to solve, what solutions to come up with. And then we got the managing group and the data group, the guys that are the GIS managers, the ones that know the databases, know how to code, know how to put this stuff together, get these databases to talk. And then they might be part of the GIS group, but they're also part of the overall engineering group of the utility companies, so to speak. And that could also include the one-call people as well. You got your database people too, GIS people. And then the locating group, the people on the ground, you know, what problems do they have? How can they help in GPS mapping? What suggestions do they have to make damage prevention better? And that's part of my group. You know, how do we leverage that technology to make their job easier? You know, we're painting and flagging every day. Why not GPS map as we're doing it? When a new house is being built, you're out there 13 times doing the same locate before anybody moves into that house. Why not GPS map it the first time? And from that point forward, it's good to go. So that's what we're trying to get into, and then we get into the security legal part of things, and that's a guy named Dean's and part of that group, and they go over all the hurdles we're going to have trying to get the bigger utilities to come in and buy into this system, sharing the data, giving data out to people in the field to use, the locators, the excavators, and then in return accepting some data back from them. You know, if they hydrovac or spot a line, dig something up, why not give a confirmation back to the utility company, hey, we found your 6-inch pipe right here, 3 foot deep, and from that point forward, it's pretty much spotted. So it makes sense that we work on this together. So I am Travis. I'm with a company called Subsurface Solutions. So my side of it, group 1, is the locating side. And when I started out as a locator back in 1995, I think, no, 92. I don't know, my wife is here, was it 92? This was my mentality though. Yeah, somewhere in 92, right out of high school. I was given a locator and a set of paper prints and said, here, go locate these stack of tickets. And those were the days where the tickets would fly out the window because it was a hot day and you had your window down. But we were doing precision guesswork based on unreliable data from people with questionable knowledge. And that's kind of true today. It hasn't changed much. These locators take a lot of blame for mislocating things, but they are dealing with some pretty questionable knowledge and unreliable data. They don't have the exact locations. They're doing this stuff from above ground, you know. They're seeing a pedestal or they're seeing a pole dip or something and trying to tie the two together visually and going out there and locating it rather than going back to their records or if they have any records at all. And so back when I first started locating in 1917 in New York City, this is what it looked like. And that's without communications. With the infrastructure bill now, you know, we got fiber going in constantly now, and it's just getting more congested. Everything's getting deeper, and the deeper you go, the more congested it gets, the harder it gets to locate, right? Unless you GPS map it as it's going in. And so we get into Minneapolis, 2021, get the communications in there, and I'm sure nothing's ever buried that nice looking. So I mean, it's more of a spider web. You know, if it was pretty like that, we wouldn't have as many problems. But the whole idea is let's get a GPS map, not just the new stuff going in, but how do we start doing the old stuff, the legacy stuff? How do we incorporate that in our everyday tasks? And so that's part of the group 1 task, is try to get this pushed out to the guys on the field, the boots on the ground, the guys that are putting the paint flags on the ground, put digital paint flags on the ground as well as you're doing it. And so the CGA threw out this question back in 2019, what can we do to help damage prevention? What are some of the key things that can help damage prevention? And second thing from the top, 99% right there came in and said updated maps, better maps. The highest out of all those. And so when we talk about white lining, we talk about more time to do a ticket, better technician pay, all that stuff, but truthfully, if we just have better maps, it's less work on the locator, it's more information to the excavator, and going back to the utility itself, it gives them more positive identification where their utilities lie. So maybe their maps aren't the greatest, but if we're giving that information back to them, hey, this is where we located it, or this is where we daylighted it, we dug it up and verified it was there, they can update their maps. And so we moved on that, and when I do locator training, I say locator, doing a locate is a lot like putting a puzzle together. When you guys put puzzles together, what do you do first? What part of the puzzle? The border, right? But before you do that,
Look at the box.
you're darn right. And if the box is missing, yeah, it makes it a lot harder, right? So you start from the outside in, but before all that, if you have a map, a puzzle box, letting you know how that thing's supposed to look, makes every job a lot easier. When I first started doing locates, this is what my maps look like. You rolled them out, you're standing out there, basically in the wind. The map might be blowing around, you're trying to piece it together. How does this fit into the map I have here set out on the hood of my truck? But we got a lot better system now. We're getting into the digital age. We got tablets that we can actually zoom in, zoom out, move the map around, get it to lie into the actual area that we plan on doing the locate. So as you can see there, as we're zooming it in, we can actually click on each asset and it tells us exactly that's a PVC 6-inch diameter pipe, what year it was put in, if there's any water leaks that happen there. There's so much more information we can fit into a digital map and give that information to the locator in the field to make their job a lot easier. And so that's where we are with group one. We're talking about digital maps, trying to get more digital maps out there, but getting the locator involved, updating those digital maps. Because when I do a locate now with an actual tablet or with a PC, and they're able to actually see where all the above ground assets are and relate it to the map that's in front of you, you can take that same map and get it right onto your locator. And we're doing these maps, all this mapping stuff in a cloud-based system. So that cloud-based system is not just tied in with the locator, that's tied in with the one-call system. It's tied in with the database back of the utility. It's tied in everywhere you want it to be tied in. And so that's what we're working on up in Minnesota. We're trying to tie all this in, and this is our beautiful flow chart that we came up with here. You got your data request coming in, or the one-call ticket coming in. It's going into what we call Fusion View. That's what we're calling it for now until we come up with a better name, but I do like Fusion View because it's fusing the stuff together. But it's seeing that bounding box. So you start off with one, the ticket requests come in, it goes, finds a bounding box such as your dig area, right? And so you got the coordinates of the dig area where the excavator plans on doing the work. It's calling out to the GIS databases at the utility companies, number 3 over there. Then it's coming back into Fusion View, bringing in the facility utilities onto the one-call ticket. So it's implanting that onto the one-call ticket, and then that is transforming over out to the locate team or an engineering team, whoever's doing the request, and the locate team can use that to figure out what assets they need to locate, make sure everything's covered, and then it's also going out to the excavator. And both the excavator and the locators are helping to create a better map. If they find something wrong on the original map, they can get that information back through the Fusion View, through the one-call system, and that database, the utility database, or whoever the GIS tech is on that side, they can choose to go ahead and use that information to update their facility maps. It makes sense that we are all on one page working together because it's a monumental task that we have. We got a lot of stuff to GPS map out there, and so why not work together? These design engineers, the SU engineers, they're trying to figure out where they can put in more utilities. I mean, there's so much stuff out there, there's hardly any space left. And so this is important information they can use, but at the same time, why are we calling locators out there to paint and flag for that information? I mean, they're not giving up everything either. They're not giving you depth readings. If we can give them a file and show them in a 3-dimensional way where everything lays, it would make their job a lot easier, and of course, more affordable for all the utilities in general. And so the project planning time goes down, construction, inspection, as-built, everything falls into place much easier. And plus it's a way to document and keep everything in archives forever. The data is really cheap. These server farms are popping up everywhere, and we can save that information forever. And so we know exactly in the future when there was a problem in this area, when this was hit, and so on and so on. And so you get into the utility locators, they can, of course, plan out their day. They can figure out what locates are gonna take the longest, kind of see where all the facilities lie, they're gonna get less tickets, if we have everything GPS maps. And then you're able to do other things as well, not just locating. You can do leak detection, gas leak detection, water leak detection, hydrants, exercise valves. All that can be in the same system and working together. And then excavators, of course, have their dig area on the one-call ticket. They can route tickets, they can do damage investigations, but we're all kind of doing the same thing, right? We're just doing it in 3 different departments. We're not working together, and all about the damage prevention in the CGA, we talk about working together. Excavators, locators, and utilities all working together for damage prevention. Communications. And communications is the biggest thing we can do to help damage prevention, right? And so why not start using one call ticket as a way to communicate? Because we have a lot of things that we can collaborate on, and that's the damage investigations. Whenever you're spotting a facility, exposing it, daylighting it, why not record that, put it in the same database, get it back to the utilities, and move forward from there. Utility verifications can be done daily as the excavation's getting done, plus the excavator can be safer because he can see all the assets that he's supposed to be avoiding. So we take it a little step further. So at the locator side of things here, the locator, for instance, can see what he has on the map and when he needs to get located. And there's a lot of locators out there that have GPS built into them. And there's a lot of other apps that you can use as well that are out there that we can use to GPS map. You don't just need a locator that has a GPS in it. You can just go ahead and go out there and start using PointMan by itself or some other software and just go ahead and start taking points. But that information, there's a lot of information you can gather as you're doing a locate. Not just where the locate's being done and how deep it is, but what size asset it is and where it all terminates to, where it's running to, what service, what customer it's serving. And so this is kind of how it looks as he's out there painting and flagging, putting paint marks on the ground. Hit of the button on the locator, it pops up the depth reading, what he's locating, and other customizable field types. So that information is all tied to the cloud-based database. And underneath there, you'll see an aerial photo kind of showing the stuff being drawn out, but that's all instantly going back to a cloud-based database that can also talk to other databases. So do you get where I'm kind of going with this? So as the locate's being done, the locate's kind of being recorded. Here we are, here's the ticket that we have in our pilot program up in Minnesota. You have the dig area, the blue part. You have all the facilities from the facility maps or databases coming in, the water, orange for communications, yellow for gas, red for electric. So the excavator can move it around. He can kind of see what he needs to avoid, and he can also see in real time the stuff coming in. So this is part of the process that we're trying to figure out. It's like we don't want to give the excavator too much right off the bat, right? Because we don't want him to go out there and dig immediately. Say, I don't need to wait for locates. I can see the gases on the other side of the street, right? Because these maps aren't perfect. It's just information. It's more information in their hands. And so when they do their asset kind of management, when they're seeing where things been located versus things that are on the map, they can verify, is everything covered? And so this is all happening through web map feature services. That means the databases is calling out, the Fusion view is calling out to the utility database, pulling in this data, and then back and forth it goes. And then the one call ticket has a buffer area. So you'll notice outside the dig area, the blue part, the utilities kind of disappear. So we've set a 100-foot buffer outside that area. Plus this information for the excavator, it doesn't show up until 48 hours has passed to give time for the locator to get out there and do their job. So they're not digging before the locator gets out there. So they're not able to, with that 100-foot buffer, move all throughout the whole city and see where everything's buried. And then the verifications to the excavator and locator before they're digging can be done. They can actually see and take inventory before it's all done. So let's take it a step further. Why not virtual paint and flags? This is something that can be done right now. We're all about, hey, did that guy get out there and do the locate? Did he do the locate correctly? Where did he locate? We're all doing all these damage investigations based on paint and flags that more than likely disappear. The evidence disappears before we get out there and do an investigation. But the excavator himself, he's chasing tickets constantly, trying to figure out if it's been painted yet before he can start a job. 48 hours, nobody seems to abide by it anymore. Everybody, is waiting 4, 5, 6 days before they can finally start a job. Why not digitally paint and flag it? And so the utility inventory comes in through the WFS immediately to the guy that's doing the locate. So he can see everything he needs to locate, hopefully in that first 48 hours. And he's got the buffer there and everything, but he can start locating. And as he's locating, we can have all that GPS data show up on the one-call ticket as well. So you have the dotted lines representing where the locate's been done, and you have the solid lines representing where the utility says the locate is. And so there's areas like that water line, I don't know if you see it, there's an actual water locate service line that's been located out, but it was not on the original maps. Might be a new house, it wasn't on the original maps yet. But now the utility company can take that data and get it on their maps. And vice versa, you might have a gas service right there that's on the maps, but it didn't get located. There's no dotted line there, so the locator missed it. But the excavator can see that. Working together, communications, again, back and forth, excavator, locators, utility companies, all working together using the one-call ticket as a way to communicate. And so that's what we're up against, trying to get this to all work. And so this is kind of a map showing everything coming in. So we have a city up there, Glencoe, Minnesota, that's kind of our guinea pig. And they are giving us access to all the utilities in the town. So they own 2 or 3 of the different utilities, and then we're getting the communications guys and the DOT and such to also cooperate. And we're bringing it all together, and eventually that map will all be on that one-call ticket as well, which you did see a portion of it. But we're trying to get everything synced up together, including services. Services are never on the maps, so if we can start mapping them out as we do our locates, that can all be added as well. And think about the future. I mean, think about where we can go with this data. We can eventually start getting into augmented reality. We can start looking at it maybe just through a phone, holding it up and seeing that same GPS data. A guy calls in to plant a tree that weekend, and you can send him a file from the one call, and he can load it up on his iPhone, look around and say, okay, there's gas over there, water over here, I'm free to put something over here. Get to that point, hopefully, eventually. And then you can take that into other things too, like VGIS. I don't know if they had a booth here or not, but they got some pretty cool systems where they can start bringing in this GPS data in an augmented form and start adding to it as well. So I can't imagine myself wearing those to go around and do locates all day long. I look pretty cool doing it though, like that guy there. But it really gives a good perspective on what to avoid. An excavator can take that to the next level and incorporate that into the backhoe. Start putting those facilities virtually right there on the screen of the backhoe, so you can start to avoid it.
But that's only as good as the information that's put on the
That's right.
GPS and GIS.
Yep. It's a long road that we have to go down. But if we can work on it together, I mean, look at the amount of times that we are relocating the same thing over and over again for a road project. Those locate marks are disappearing, 2 hours after you put them down because of snow or traffic or whatever. Same thing with, that road project's being called in several times from several different contractors for the work they're doing. It's like, why aren't we just GPS mapping this as we're doing it? The engineers, all the wasted tickets, the time that the locators could be spending to go, they're kind of ignoring the engineering tickets now because they know we got more important things to be doing to get our paint and flags on the ground for people that are actually digging, and so they're kind of ignoring them. So because they're behind. But if we can make their jobs easier, by starting getting this information down and collecting it collaboratively, the excavator should be able to say with an app or something, okay, I just exposed this telephone line right here. Here's a GPS point. It might not be the best GPS point. It might be 3-6 foot accurate, but at least it's something to verify that it was dug up in this area at such and such a date by so and so, and it was verified it is there. So it's being done now. I mean, and we are putting it all together. We have a GIS cloud-based system that we're working with along with Esri. We're working with other companies as well to bring this all together into that Fusion View concept. So we do have a working example, and we're working out the bugs, and that's what our group's doing. We're just keep on plugging away at it until we finally kind of have it figured out and got a working form that we can kind of spread out to hopefully the other states. So, yeah, you got a question back there?
I have several.
Okay, you want to come up? You want a microphone?
No, I'm good. Everybody probably knows that I'm loud enough. But the first question I have is who owns the data?
The utility. And so let's get into the security and regulations part of this. That's my expertise. No, it's not. No, it's not. But I'm the only one here presenting on it. So there are a lot of question marks on that. How are we going to get the big guys to buy in, right? The big utility companies to share their data. Well, using web map feature services, the data is not being pulled off their system. It's retained on their system. They have complete control to turn that on or off to share with the one call system. Because the web map feature services is just, it's like a hyperlink, right? You just turn it on and off and you allow people to see it or you don't. And so if there's some things, if there's something going on in the world, terrorism or something that, they can just go ahead and turn it off. It's their data. They can choose to share what they want to share because it's all in attribute form. They don't want to probably share a depth reading. They don't want to maybe share where the services are laid. They just want to share maybe some mainline stuff, but they can tiptoe in until they feel comfortable, but it is their data. And that's the most important thing is we don't want to copy their data. We want the data to be as up to date as possible, and you only do that is by retaining it on their system and just pulling it in as it's being called by the Fusion View. So the one call ticket's bringing up the bounding box. That bounding box is going into Fusion View or figuring it out and calling out to the utilities database and basically pulling in just the utility information for that area.
So if a locator's out there and they pull up new information, they're going to graciously provide it back at no cost back to the utility.
Oh, it won't be no cost, I'm sure.
So it's their data, but they're paying for that data at that point.
It would have to be put in the contract, which hopefully there are some contracts being written right now, and so the utility locator, there are locators out there right now that are in the contract mapping as they're doing the locates and getting paid an extra 35% per ticket. But look at all the information that they're gathering for the utility company as they're doing it, and it's 35% more on a ticket is not that much more money if you're in the grand scheme of things. If you actually hired a company to come in and GPS out all your lines, it'd be much more significant. And so that information is always being retained at the utilities database though. And that's the thing, we're just kind of calling through the database, pulling in what we need to have it on the ticket for 10 days or whatever, 14 days, whatever your state does, and then it's gone. So
they're not retaining it
no.
permanently?
We're not retaining anything permanently, it's just calling it out, yep.
So, but to me, and I think about it from a business model, but also from just a safety model.
Yeah.
If there's new information coming in, I don't want it to disappear in 14 days.
No, it's going to be retained, and so that information coming in back to you from the locator or back from the excavator or whomever is getting added to it, and that Fusion View is kind of tying all those databases together because everybody's got different things that they call it too. Some people call it a depth reading and some people call it something else. So anyways, that's what Fusion View's got to do. It's got to try to pull it all together, give it the same vocabulary, and that's kind of what the big hurdle. If you want to join the group, it'd be great to have you. But that's the big hurdle that we have to overcome now. How do we bring this in? How do we sell it? Because again, nobody wants their data compromised. Yep.
So then the next discussion, and I happen to spend half my year in Minnesota, so I'm very.
Okay.
Glencoe's teeny tiny.
Yes. Yeah.
Talking for those who.
Glencoe's big. What are you talking about? No.
We'll discuss that later.
Hey, we got to get in the baby pool first before we get in the deep end.
Yep. Why was Glencoe selected?
Because they were part of the pilot program. So when we started the pilot program, we had, we offered up basically a discounted locator with GPS and all the and part of a GIS mapping system to get people to kind of go out and GPS out your stuff and help us gather data. So we have data to actually work off of, and Glencoe was one of the first. And it just so happens Glencoe has multiple utilities in the same town, so it's just easy to ask permission from one person to get 3 utilities instead of going to 3 different utilities. And the other utilities in the town have some good information too. So it's a small footprint. It's at least 3,000 people. It's not that small, right? So and we're going to move from there. And so we're actually just trying to get a working format going, and then we're going to move up from there. So, and that's the thing. We've got a lot of legal hurdles that we got to overcome as well, and we've looked into it. At least Dean's group's looked into it on the legal side of things. And really, there's some different ways of exchanging the infrastructure data. I mean, there's nothing restricted. it's pretty much on the utility side if they want to actually perform or help us and help give up that data. So on you got the data suppliers and then the end users. We're going to have an agreement or something that they have to sign off on. That's what we were thinking. We just don't want to give any fly-by-night excavator this information. They almost need to go through a process where they have to take a test online and go through some kind of safety training and different thing, that you normally would do, and be pretty much on the white list for the state fire marshal or whoever regulates it. We just don't want to give everybody carte blanche to it. Yeah.
I was always under the impression that we don't give and I'm with Water and Sewer in Savannah, Georgia, we don't give our water and sewer maps out to anybody. I mean, we don't give GIS maps out, we don't give them to anybody. I always thought there was a homeland security issue for that, and Georgia Power says the same thing. I
know, they do. And they say that a lot. I hear that all the time. But truthfully, you can get on the internet and find out all that stuff pretty quick. And so, especially with the transmission gas pipelines, I mean, that's the biggest thing right there, but that's all over the internet. So it's like, when it comes to damage prevention, I think that's a little bit more higher priority. I mean, these things are getting damaged every second. Just in my presentation here, there was already probably 4,500 damages done in the time we've been talking. So it's like, okay, which is the higher priority? I mean, if we can start sharing this information, GIS guys have this thing on their shoulders that they're proud. I mean, they're proud to have their own data, and they want to keep that data in their back pocket, and they don't want to share with anybody. But that kind of defeats the purpose, doesn't it? When they can have a lot of soldiers out there in the field gathering data for them to make their data better, and in return they can help them, giving them better data to do their job. So it goes back and forth.
Our attorney has told us not to.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was just probably 3 or 4 months ago.
So we got attorneys on it. They're part of our system, so they're looking into everything that we have to overcome, and that's the biggest thing. Come up with some kind of user agreement for the end user, but also the data, the utilities, and something that they're comfortable with. And then the facility operators, who hosts it. Of course, the data is always on the utility side, and we're doing everything through web map feature services. So it's dynamically being updated. So we're not dealing with old data, data that was given over to the one call 5 years ago. It's always being updated, and so you have the latest and greatest. And then the access, who controls the access? We have to make a system that is kind of walks on its own too. This is a pro bono project here, so we don't have any staff, and so you can't just be taking people's calls and helping them out. It kind of has to be self-monitored, so to speak. But in order to keep the big guys happy, we got to cover all our bases legally and figure it out, and then in return keep it simple. It's got to be simple in order for people to use it, because if people don't use it, then there's no point of doing it, because then they're not bringing more information back to in-house helping update people's maps or utility maps. And so we're working on that, but keep in mind there are examples of this happening right now. So who is from Montana? Montana DOT is doing it, aren't they? And so anything that's being done in the Montana DOT right-of-way has to be GPS mapped. It's mandatory in Montana, correct?
Yes, I believe it is now.
Okay. And so Colorado's doing it as well. Everything that Colorado does, at least for the DOT-wise, in their right-of-way has to be GPS mapped. So they both made it mandatory in those 2 states. Plus, Scottish Vault, the UK has a system like this already, and it's been going on for years. And so that's already out there. And then there's some other efforts in a couple other states that we've covered in our meetings, and so we have people come in and talk about what they're doing and how they're getting by with it, And so I know the Colorado DOT one's been in place for about 3 years now. I don't know, Montana might be about the same amount of time.
We're a little bit behind them. I think 2 years.
Okay, 2 years implemented, and so there's a lot of this going on in other countries, and those people are part of our team as well. And so that might be the end of my presentation, because my computer wants to update, and it's not my computer. All right. So,
Travis, can I ask another question? What are you doing the data from the, say, City of Savannah is a poor GIS system?
Yes.
Poor GIS, but we have a line here showing on the GIS system as on the south side, and actually on the north side. you know, and
Yep.
how do you,
How do we get that back to the people that need it? So the locator or whoever's doing the work out there would have that system, something similar to like what that app was with the locator, but they could report that on the one call ticket. So that's going back into the Fusion View process, getting reported, and then the utility themselves can either take that information and run with it or get somebody out there to get it mapped correctly so they feel comfortable with those maps. But at least it's getting reported. And so it's the same as if somebody exposed your water line. You would like to know, hey, they found it. Yes, it was verified 6 foot deep right here and everything looks good. So you can now just click on that map and say this line is positively identified back in 2022, and you're going to feel more confident as a locator when you go out to locate it. If you had struggled with it at all, you have something to fall back on. So we have examples of that in wind farms right now. So the wind turbines are, you know, putting out so much kV, and when they come in together, all these cables, these primary cables are running 15 kV or higher, 3 foot away from each other. You try to locate that using a magnetic field locator, it's just like you can find maybe 2 out of the 14.
Right.
Well, you incorporate a GPS map coinciding with your locator, you can at least have something to go on. Get some paint flags on the ground and get some marks down to allocate everything that's in there. Use all the tools that you have on hand. And at the same time, if those aren't on the GPS map, if you do find them, you can report it back to the utility. So the Fusion View is a way to communicate back and forth. Yeah.
So if the data is always dynamic and
Yep.
updated as much as possible, is there a snapshot at some point being kept, or how would you do a damage investigation?
Right. So it's almost like you need to go and write an app for us, but I see it as an app-based format, something like that. So I'm thinking like, you know, the One Call Concepts is a big company, but they could easily probably write something that an excavator, because how do you get that in an excavator's hands too? Because an excavator doesn't care about GPS mapping stuff, but it'd sure be nice that he could report when he found something, and he can just download an app on an Android Play Store or an Apple Play Store or something, you know, and just get it loaded so he can go ahead and do a damage investigation the same way. Damage investigations are done all the time, but everybody's kind of doing it in a paper form, or they're doing it in their own database. Why not make a kind of a standard attribute form that everybody can share through, you know, a one call or a CJ type of form? So it'd be pretty simple, and you can add your own photos to it. Doesn't mean that, you know, it's your perspective and everything's retained in the same spot. Maybe the dirt report will have that. I don't know. If you got any ideas, feel free to spit them out, because again, this is a working a project. I mean, we're implementing a whole new thing here, and it's cool. I mean, we're creating something, and there's a lot of questions to be answered. So, yeah.
Love the idea, by the way. Now, you had mentioned wanting the latest information, but you also mentioned about the accuracy of the information that's being received.
Yeah.
Have you considered looking at, you know, documenting and saying, okay, this may be older data, but it's somehow more accurate data.
Yep.
And I don't know how you track that.
You would have to track it through, like, well, you have the uncertainty levels from GPS units coming in through the GPS sentence. So that's one of the attributes we're looking on the team one here. We kind of came up with a bunch of attributes we would like to have, and that's one. So a GPS uncertainty level comes in almost on every GPS unit now. That makes it nice and simple. It's, you know, 0.6 foot accurate at such and such a date, along with what instrument was used to do that collecting, what GPS format were they in, with WGS 84 and AD 83, what datum, you know, all that stuff can come in together, and then you can kind of decipher it from there. But at the same time, you know, locate certainty levels. You know, what locator were they using? Were they using null mode? Were they using, you know, did they have their peak and null lined up? What was their locate certainty level? That's something that's missing right now. If we just had a number for that we can record on. Yep.
Back to the damage investigation piece, how do you determine liability when the information that you're providing is inaccurate?
The information we're providing is for, it's the front of your puzzle box. It's just for reference only. And so that would be part of the end user agreement, and we have it spelled out, and we've actually got a working format of that right now, letting them know, and they have to agree to that in order to be able to even see this. So if you are an excavator and you want to have this accessibility to see the data, you would have to sign off on that form letting you know, and plus the training that's involved, that this data is only for reference only. You do not dig on this data, but if you do want to help build this project too, you report when you do find something and you 100% verify it's there, or you found an unknown or an unlocatable or something.
Just another tool in your tool bag, and you still have to
Yeah.
follow the same.
Still got to follow the same rules. We don't circumvent the one call rules. That's how, we have to stay within those rules. And yeah.
That's when we start getting into that augmented reality from a backflow standpoint.
I know.
In that line, it's not painted on the ground.
It looks cool, but
Measurement.
yeah, I wouldn't want to dig on that still. I'd still be down there with my shovel, yeah. Any other questions? All right, just hopefully I give you something to think about. I appreciate you guys coming to this rather than going to the pink cow. Nobody wanted to see the pink cow, right? Now the guy that was buried alive, that would have been interesting, but this hopefully gives you something to think about in your own states, and we'll give you some updates as we work on this. This is not going to be done next year. It's a long work in progress, but we've made some great strides in the last year. So if you guys want any of my information, my number is up here. Feel free to approach me after this. Thank you again for coming, everybody. Appreciate it.